everybody know, again, I'm Alex Beattie, divorce prep coach, aka the divorce planner. I love these conversations I have on Instagram with different divorce professionals. Today's guest is one of my favorites. Josephti Cruz of the Wealth Garden Financial Services is an incredibly experienced money manager, financial planner, you name it, she does it with money. This is the person you want in your corner. And she's also the host of the podcast, Cover Your Assets. I'm really excited that I'm going to be a guest on it coming up. And we're going to be talking all about assets and divorce today. But without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today, Josephti.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So I'm just going to kind of dive right in. I think there's a lot of buzzy stuff that you see on divorce social media. And when it comes to assets, I see a lot of rhetoric out there about, oh my God, your spouse is hiding things from you. You need to get to the bottom of it. Pay me $19.99 and I'll tell you how, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it gets people really fired up. And that was kind of one of the things I wanted to cover today, because I'm a firm believer, as are you, in there's a difference between kind of teaching a person how to fish and just giving a person a fish. So I feel like I'm hopeful that there are some ways that we can help people who are either just starting the divorce process right now and they're going through their assets and maybe they're a little nervous that they don't have access to everything. So let me jump in with the first question. So in your experience, do most people hide money or assets during divorce?
I mean, look, it happens, right? That people purposely do it, but I would say more often than not, it's by accident, right? So I want to give the example of if you've ever applied for a mortgage to buy a home. The underwriter asks for tons of bank statements and all this and that, and you give them everything that you think represents your life, and then they come back with these crazy questions like this line item, where did that dollar go? And then you realize, oh, whoops, I think I forgot about a bank account, or I forgot about this paycheck. Let me send that to you. So I feel like most of the time it might not be on purpose.
You know, that's a really good point. And you brought up paychecks, right? So I think there are a lot of people out there, I think more often than not, people who are going through a split, it's not so acrimonious that there is a financial discovery process at the beginning of, so both parties are obligated to, share everything, or get in trouble, basically.
Right. Yes.
So that's a really great time when I'm working with clients early in the divorce preparation process. I love having them get their hands on as much financial information as possible. And, I think it's really common where, maybe one spouse is in charge of finances and you don't have access to everything, but you can even kind of go through and get your hands on everything within your power, and then start making a list of things either you're aware of that you can't get access to, or, just have a conversation when you are engaging with an attorney about, here's some concerns I have. So like activating yourself from the jump really puts you in the best position even before starting the divorce process. That's my jam. I love to activate people to be their own best advocates.
Especially if you're the person asking for the divorce, I would say, if possible, try to gather as much information as you can before starting that process with your spouse, or even finalizing that conversation. Especially if you're what I call the non-CFO spouse, if you're not in charge of the finances and you're scared, find what you can. Find what you can first.
I think that's great advice. And if you're the one who's going to bring up the divorce, and by the way, even if your spouse just springs it on you, I know the shock, right? A lot of people just want to bury their head in the sand at that point, but I'm telling you, don't. It's a mistake.
Right.
Push through. My whole philosophy, there's an emotional side to divorce and there's a business side. You need to address them both, but separate them. So kind of if you can do that, the jump, it's really helpful, and focus on what's in your control. And if your spouse says they want a divorce, or if you're saying I want a divorce, start focusing on, getting active and tracking down all this information is within your control. Like you have something within your power to start the process. Let me ask you something. What if any, is the ideal time? You're a financial planner. You and I have worked together previously on divorce things. When's the right time for somebody to engage with a financial planner if they're going through a divorce?
Well, I guess if you already have a financial planner, have that conversation immediately and say, this might be happening. What do you think I should be aware of? And just start talking through hypothetical scenarios. But I did want to say, if you're looking for help with the financials during a divorce, I think a financial planner wears a different hat than, let's say, a certified divorce financial analyst. So if you need number crunching help to look through all those statements and incomes and expenses and all that stuff, it would be you'd be best suited to find a CDFA, so certified divorce financial analyst, to help you crunch those numbers, figure out those settlement numbers, just help you understand everything. And then maybe towards the end of the divorce process, when you have a good expectation of what you're going to be getting, utilize your financial planner or a new financial planner to help you calculate, okay, what's my new financial life going to look like going forward? And what do I need to do in terms of changes?
I thank you for that clarification as to when to engage whom. Like I said, I'm a huge believer in people actually have more ownership over what can be done in the process. I love that you brought up CDFAs. It is so important to start doing financial planning as soon as possible. And I think for a lot of people out there, you say financial planning and they're like, well, I'm not qualified. I don't know what to do. I'm telling you, whoever is watching or listening, you have more available to you than you think. Even like what you were talking about for a CDFA to go through and crunch all the numbers of your life to figure out that those are things you can do. We all get year-end spending reports. You have access to your checking account statements where you can go through and see where money goes. I always, again, these are actions you can take. You can always get to the point where you're hiring a CDFA later, but no one will ever care about the details of your life as much as you do. Full stop. And so starting to educate yourself early on in the process, as opposed to just waiting for somebody else to start it or to do it, is always going to put you in a much better position. If this intimidates you, please head over to my blog at thedivorceplanner.net/blog. I've got a lot of different articles, even conversations with CDFAs about things that you can do now to start that process. Jumping back into, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's just important to be truthful with yourself.
Yeah.
So like you said, don't bury your head in the sand. So if you know that you're paralyzed, go get the help you need, whether it's self-serving stuff like that walks you through step by step through Alex's site, whether it's hiring a professional just to do it all for you. Just know that there is help out there, whether you get the help to do it yourself or get the help for someone to do it with you.
Absolutely. And that's the number one thing, is like activating. I think when most people look, there's a paralysis when you hear divorce. I don't know what to do. It's how's my life? Because so much is up in the air. Like my life is going to change dramatically. The financial implications are big for everybody, statistically, especially for our ladies out there. So kind of taking the reins on it as soon as possible. And by the way, there's no such thing as a bad meeting. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if you're like, I don't know about this, start reaching out to people, ask questions. If you need a network of support, which you should have going through a divorce, ask around. Does anybody have a financial planner? Does somebody have a CDFA? Just take an initial exploratory conversation, because that's a step. All you have to do is take one step at a time to really kind of tame those financial fears and get control. What are some of the biggest financial challenges people face after a divorce, Josephti?
It's really that transition process, right? Now you're one person. Maybe you didn't feel like the head of the household before, but now you are, whether you like it or not. Most likely there is a reduced income that you're dealing with and higher expenses that you're responsible for, right? So I think that biggest challenge is that adjustment period and maybe the shock of being like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now with, less of an income, more expenses? I mean, I think you and I have talked about this many, many times. it's a transition, right? And it's temporary. And now we are in control of what happens to our lives. So it is shocking. It could be scary, but it's temporary. And, it's just you taking that control and just thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to get a different job? Am I going to get training? Am I going to cut my expenses? Is it all of the above? But can I change this to look better for me going forward? The answer is yes, because now you're the boss.
You brought something up two things that I kind of wanted to go back to. One was when you were saying the CFO of the household. It's true. Like more often than not, there's usually one spouse. You divide up certain responsibilities, and in more cases than not, one spouse might be in charge of the finances. So that other spouse while they might have very heavy responsibility, otherwise they might feel a little intimidated about the financial part of what they're looking at. And yes, moving forward, you're going to be going from either a 2-income household to one, or 1-income household to perhaps then that other spouse needing to get a job. So the earlier you crunch the numbers of your life and then add in how that will change after divorce, the better off you are to make a plan. So as you said,
Right.
Transition is temporary.
And it can be better, right?
Yes.
You know what? In the immediate term, yeah, it'll probably be worse. But you just accept it. You accept it as best you can and be like, this is not the way I want to live my life, but I'm going to do something about it.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity for something different. And you know what? I think there's also like a lot of shame that surrounds money. No, like you can even without a divorce, but then you add divorce on top of it and doubly so. I just want to remind people, if you're in a situation where perhaps the other spouse is more of the high income person who's bringing in, and either you're working outside of the home and not making as much, or you're not working outside of the home, you are just as valuable. Just because you haven't brought in a specific check at a certain amount doesn't mean you're without power or that you made a mistake. This is just a time of change, and those were the roles that you had. And again, now it's your time to kind of activate yourself, so that you don't feel as helpless in the process if you were not really in charge or had access to a lot of the financial information during your marriage. And I think that especially applies to my stay-at-home parents out there. That can be a really
Yeah.
scary feeling. Do you have a lot of clients who come to you after a divorce who are transitioning from being stay-at-home parents?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are the clients that I really want to help, because it is probably the most jarring for them,
Yeah.
right? Going from not bringing in the income to having to do that, right? And realizing, oh my gosh, alimony and child support aren't going to cut
Yeah.
it. I need to do more. And
Yeah.
that's a huge lifestyle change, right?
It
Career
is.
change, lifestyle.
Yeah. Very much so. And when we're talking about assets and divorce, some of the assets that you really need to kind of be a little more aware of as you're going through the negotiation process as someone who was not working outside of the home are things like retirement, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have not been able to have somebody contributing to a retirement account during your marriage, you've missed out on that compound growth. If you're, depending on what state you're in many states, there's community property and equitable splits of things. So if the other spouse has retirement accounts, they will be required to divvy them up, whatever was earned during the duration of the marriage. But I want to remind people that money that's in a retirement account does not the same value of money that's in a checking or savings
I
account,
was
right?
just going to say that. Yeah.
No,
It's like
please.
$100,000 IRA
Yeah.
is not the same as cash in the bank. $100,000 cash in the bank. It's not equal.
Yeah.
Not equal. So, our firm actually has a client that came to us after the fact that unfortunately got a portion of her settlement in pre-tax savings instead of a bank account, and she thought it was the same, and it's just not.
This is why we're having this
Yeah.
conversation. is going to ring a bell for somebody out there so they understand. Again, I'm Alex Beattie, divorce prep coach. My guest today is Josephti Cruz of the Wealth Garden Financial Services. She's a wealth management advisor. She's a financial planner. She's everything you want when you want somebody to help you grow your money. Trust me. She's one of the best in the business. And I will say again, educating yourself before the divorce process begins, especially before you open your mouth to start negotiating on your assets. Please head over to my blog, thedivorceplanner.net. There are a lot of articles and previous conversations I've even had with Josephti. I know we're kind of button up on our 20 minutes in a second. If anybody has a question about divorce and assets, please feel free to drop them in. I wanted to actually go through, go back. Both you and I came to this kind of niche of the work we do from a very place, right? So we both went through a divorce, and I love being able to kind of share real life experiences that we've had with people who might be at the beginning of their journey. What do you think is the one thing that surprised you most about the divorce process that you wish you knew sooner?
I had incorrectly assumed that my consulting attorney and the mediator knew everything there was to know about splitting assets and calculating alimony and child support. And I realized years later that I was given incorrect information and made bad calculations, which is actually why, as a financial planner, I went to get my CDFA credential. Because if you think about it, lawyers know the basic information to crunch the numbers, but they can't do the deep dive. And me, as a CDFA, I know the basics about divorce law, but I cannot do a deep dive on the law. So it's not about either or. It's just being able to create that team to support you if that's what you need, right? If you need more than doing it yourself. But that's what I realized, and it was a shock. I thought attorneys and mediators knew everything there was to know about the numbers.
Yeah.
So
I that's such an important thing to share. Thank you so much. Again, Josephti Cruz, as she mentioned, she is a CDFA. She's my go-to for everything when it comes to finances, divorce, pre, post, in the middle of, whatever it is. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do have a quick question. Does the Wealth Garden help with doing, the quadro that belongs to like a pension?
I can help crunch the numbers for it, and I can refer you to someone to write out the document, but I do not write the document itself.
This is actually, by the way, thank you, Wildflower 57, for dropping that in. This is a great question. And here, I just kind of want to take it and pull back, right? So you're in the middle of the divorce, you're splitting everything up. Yes, then you need the court order, the quadra from the quadra specialist. That's somebody who goes in and drafts up this quadra, which is required as a part of your judgment that says, here's how things are going to get split, and here's where they're valued.
For the retirement
correct.
Accounts, for the employer retirement accounts,
SEP IRAs, 401ks, and pensions. Thank you, Wildflower, for mentioning pensions. You don't have to wait until that point in the process to figure out what the valuation of those accounts are. That is something your CDFA can do. You just need to have access to statements so you know what the amounts are in there. So again, that's two different things. And educating yourself about the values of those accounts way early before you even start the process. Again, it's about preparing for negotiation and really understanding the value of your assets, which is, I think, a great way to kind of conversation to a close. But I also want to remind everybody who joined us today, Josephti hosts a fantastic podcast called Cover Your Assets, and you can find it where all your great podcasts are, right?
Yeah, so Spotify, Apple, it's on YouTube as well. It's a divorce and money podcast. So we try to keep it light. It's a heavy topic, but it's all about divorce financial planning.
Yeah, it's been fantastic for all of those who are looking for a deeper dive. I hope you check it out. And Josephti, if somebody's interested in working with you, how can they find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a funny name, so if you can write down, you can find me online. Website is the Wealth Garden, F as in Frank, S as in Sam.com. It's for financial services. So the Wealth Garden Financial Services.com. Instagram is Josephti C or at Josephti C. You can find me that way. And like I said, nobody really has my name, so you could just Google me.
Well, I have, and it's going to be posted on this conversation immediately after we wrap. And I will have this conversation on my blog available for anyone. And I also have a couple archive conversations we've had in the past, and those all
Yep.
have links so that you can find Josephti. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love it when we have these
Thanks.
conversations. And
Same,
thank you to
same.
thank you to everybody who joined us. Please mark your calendars. Next week, I'm going to be talking to relationship coach Kim Polander. You might be thinking, why is the divorce planner, a divorce prep coach, talking to a relationship coach? Well, we're going to be talking about when is the right time to actually say it's time for a divorce. How do you figure that out? And we'll be giving you tips and tools, and she is a wealth of information. So I hope you come back. If you want to be alerted to all these IG chats in advance, please sign up for my newsletter. You can do so at www.thedivorceplanner.net. And I'll see you all next week. Thanks, Josephti.
Thanks for having me, Alex, and I love your newsletters.
Oh,
Bye.
thank you. Bye, everybody.